In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about pausing in negotiations. So, if you're a freelancer, or you're a software developer or a consultant in the software space, these videos are aimed to help you out. I also offer one-to-one sessions where we can talk about your challenges and goals, and I can share some of the advice I've picked up over the last decade as a senior software developer myself, and someone who's often dealt with very senior levels of management. If that's something that's interested in you, I'm sure there'll be some information outside of this video, linked somewhere. Go ahead and check that out. So in today's video, we're going to talk about one of the recent sessions I've had, without going into any kind of private information, to do with a freelancer who said she kind of struggled when she was having to negotiate with some of her clients who were a bit more pushy and tended to be kind of interested in striking deals and haggling and negotiating, that kind of thing. So I wanted to cover a couple of the points I had suggested to her as ideas to try moving forward, and just hopefully give you guys out there something that might be useful to you and might be helpful if you're in a similar situation in future. Negotiating is something I've spent a while looking into over my life. It's been something that's I found just interesting, generally speaking, and there's clearly a well-documented phenomenon of using pauses correctly when you talk. Fundamentally, they can add a level of assertiveness to your conversation, a level of strength to your position that people just tend to not be even aware of unless you take an interest in negotiating, unless you're interested in sort of haggling and striking deals. And that's something you have to remember, particularly as a freelancer. You will be dealing with some customers who just genuinely get a thrill out of negotiating, out of haggling, out of, bringing you down from whatever price you said you would offer to just bringing that down. And moving slightly to a side, sometimes freelancers can feel like you have to put your prices up almost to prepare for the haggle. But I think it's a lot more powerful if you can stick to your guns, stick to your price, to dig your heels in and be sure that what you've done is justified, and the only way your price is coming down is if the amount of work is coming down accordingly. It's a sign of strength to be sure of yourself, and it's quite often something clients will be glad that they have access to in working with you. Someone who knows what they're doing, someone who's sure of what they're doing, and someone who's not easily pushed around. It can make for good long-term relationships, and ultimately, if someone doesn't want to work with you because you're not easily pushed around, ask yourself if you might be better off without them. In the meantime, though, let's talk a little bit about pausing and how that helps. So, fundamentally, the lady I was talking to found that when she was in these conversations, talking about prices, talking about speccing up the work, the client kind of almost cunningly would go quiet at the point that she was supposed to sort of justify her side of the argument. So let's say he's saying, okay, so how much will this cost? He'll go quiet, which is, normal enough. And she'll say a price, and he'll stay quiet. Now, ordinarily, you would expect someone to say something like, oh, okay, right, that's a bit more than I was expecting. Or, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good deal. Or, oh, is there anything we can do with that? Something, right? But if they're saying nothing, what do? It can feel a bit overwhelming, right? Like you're sat there, nothing's going on, and you're thinking, now if you're an amateur, or if, let's say, inexperienced freelancer, if you're new to it, I can make you feel, quite intimidated. So in this girl's case, and I'm sure in many other people's cases, certainly something I've gone through, you can feel a need to want to fill up that silence with noise. Now, sadly, in this case, the way she was filling up that silence was by kind of bringing herself down, by lowering her own prices and saying, well, okay, yeah, perhaps, or is that a bit too expensive? Maybe we should change it. I mean, I could perhaps do it for 5% off or 10%, and it was kind of just chipping away at her own argument. And I suspect that the person who was doing the negotiating on the other end kind of had either detected this in her, or negotiating is something that comes fairly natural to them, and they were capitalizing on using that silence to get a better deal. So the first thing you have to remember when you're in these kind of negotiations is that some people enjoy haggling. They enjoy negotiating. They like the thrill of having your prices come down lower than what it is you went in with, or having you overcommit to stuff and knowing that they kind of drove that. That's a win to them. It's like, they came in, they were prepared to do this, but I got them to here, or they wanted to charge me this, but I brought them down to there, and they like that feeling, right? Understand that that's neither a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing, and you might be dealing with people who are in that category, right? So first of all, understand that that's a thing. People enjoy it or might enjoy it, and you're not going to easily tell. So don't sort of take it the wrong way, or don't assume instantly that you must be looking weak or vulnerable or something, and that's why this person's trying it on with you. Some people just try it on with everyone, right? In terms of haggling and negotiating and stuff. Number two is to recognize that silence can be used to your advantage. Number three I'm going to talk about is the motivation. I want to keep that to one side for now, because it's important to have a motivation for when you use this kind of silence thing. But just as a practical tip, using silence can really help you and your argument to be stronger. So if you imagine someone saying to me, okay, well, how much are you going to do it for? And I say 500. There's this follow-up silence where the inclination might be to sort of say, well, is that too much? I mean, we could possibly negotiate. So imagine someone says 500. Or maybe we could, if that's a bit too much, maybe 480 or something like that, or 450. You're just chipping away at your own argument here, right? You could say 500, and you can kind of put the ball back into their court and go, how does that sound to you? And now we're not implicitly waiting, kind of like a Western shootout, like a standoff, Mexican standoff or something, saying like who's going to speak first. Now you've put the ball in their court. They need to speak first, or they're just ignoring you, in which case perhaps the best thing to say there is like, it looks like you're going to need some time to think about this. Perhaps get back to me when you're ready to talk. So they'll either say something like, yep, sounds good. Well, that was a bit higher than I was expecting, but now they're talking rather than you justifying whatever, or chipping away at your own arguments, or lowering your price, or overcommitting because of that silence that they've imposed, and your awkwardness, which is the intent of the silence, by the way. It's to make you feel slightly uncomfortable and awkward. People don't want to sit in what is well known as an awkward silence, right? It's for you to fill up, but don't know why you came to the price you came to, know why you came to the commitments you've made, and be sure of them. And this kind of leads very nicely into point 3. When you go into a negotiation, especially if you know in advance that it's going to be difficult, because then you can kind of think about this in advance and prepare for it. But if you don't know in advance, try to what the reason is that you've gone into that negotiation. Chances are you're a smart person, you know what you're doing, you know why you've come up to the prices you've come up with, you know why you've committed to what you've committed to, and why your estimates are roughly what they are. Don't let someone just assume that you're open to negotiation, that you're open to having your prices changed or your commitments changed. Assume that what you've done is for the right reasons. Understand that you're experienced, and if you're not experienced, understand that you've certainly must have sat down and thought about it carefully, right? So be sure of yourself. That's the first thing. If you think you're being unreasonable, then don't do it. But if you think you are being reasonable, then don't change. Don't change because they use silence or pressure or something like that to try and make you feel uncomfortable. Just know that what you've done is reasonable. Understand primarily what your motivation is. Why are you a freelancer? Why are you a consultant? Why are you working? It's to make money, right? It's an exchange. I'm going to provide you valuable work that you're prepared to pay this price for or are not. And that's part of the negotiation, is to establish whether or not you're prepared to pay that price. If you're not, understand this. Are you prepared to work for a lower price? Are you in a situation, for example, where work is scarce and you'll take whatever comes? If you are, then the reality of your life is you may have to just negotiate down, because if you need the money, something's better than nothing, right? But be careful with that. At the same time, you could have found someone else. If you took another few phone calls, you might find someone else who'd be happy to pay your prices. That's a decision that you have to make. But if you are prepared to walk away, and that's very important, it's very important in any deal, and perhaps it's the number 4 point, it's the 4th point, is the willingness to walk away. Whoever's prepared to walk away is in a stronger position. If you're dealing with a client who really needs work, who's sought you out because of your reputation, or because perhaps you've been recommended by word of mouth, then you're in the stronger position, because you can walk away and they're not really going to find anyone else who has your reputation, who has your recommendation through word of mouth, etc. If you're part of a huge, say, comparison list of different potential suppliers who are being considered, then it's worth recognizing that you have a 1 in 20 chance of getting that job, unless you do have some unique features or unique characteristics, something that's making you stand out from your competition, right? And these are things you have to factor in, right? You can stick your heels in the ground and you can draw a line and say, I'm not crossing that line. If you're strong enough to be able to do that, because actually I don't need this work, and the truth is, if I were to charge this much, I wouldn't enjoy it, and I wouldn't wake up happy every morning going, yeah, let's get on with this work, I can't wait to deliver this. You'd be waking up going, God, I hate this. Why did I lowball myself so much? Why did I put in such a low price for what I'm doing? And that depression, that's going to affect other clients. That's going to affect other interactions, whether that's with your family, whether that's with your other customers, with whoever. The fact that you've got this underlying current of feeling like you've undersold yourself is not going to be something that makes you feel happy in life, right? Again, if you have to just take it because that's the reality, then look, sometimes you just have to kind of bite the bullet and get on with it. But if you've got yourself into a position where you actually really would be willing to walk away if you couldn't get it at your terms, the way you make it clear that you're willing to walk away is by not filling up those silences with noise and talking and chipping away at your own arguments just because you feel uncomfortable. Be sure of yourself. Know that what you're doing is fairly priced, it's reasonable, and if people want to use silence and try to get you to fill it up, just carry it on, just be silent. And even more mature than that is to say, okay, so looks like you're thinking about things there. Is this something that perhaps we should reschedule for when you're sure about your prices? And make it clear that you're not scared. You see them as an equal. You're dealing as an equal. Their silence isn't going to intimidate you. It's something that actually what they're doing. What the idea might be, and maybe they know, maybe they don't, who knows. But what you're certainly not going to do is lowball yourself or undervalue yourself. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm doing a bunch of sessions like this, very much tailored to people in technology, consultants, freelancers, permanent staff too, particularly senior staff who might have challenges dealing with senior management, or be interested in learning some of the tips I've picked up over time as a senior tech lead myself. There'll be information around the video, like I said. Just get in touch, or subscribe, that kind of thing, and hopefully I'll put more of these out. And if there's certain things that you'd be interested in talking about, then let me know. I'll happily give you my side of things, and with a bit of luck, that'll be something you find useful. So take care, nice talking to you, and speak soon.